What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Striker MLS Podcast. Yeah, I'm back. I'm Jon Arnold. I'm here. It's been a while since I've been on the podcast. Chris Bils in Austin. I know you've been keeping it rolling with Victor, with Phil West, with other friends, but you haven't seen me, so I'm sure they haven't been quite as fun. What's up, Chris? Good to see you, man.
Yeah, welcome back. What
Thank you.
exotic locations have you been
Yeah, no, I didn't.
frequenting?
I used to get off the grid and do some good travel and would disappear to another country, but I just needed to recharge the batteries a little bit. So seeing some of my fiance's family in San Francisco, a little NorCal cabin getaway, which was nice. So it was good. We did that for Thanksgiving. How are you, man? How was the holiday? How's the off season recharge? We don't get that much of a break, especially this year with the season moved up in 2022 because of the World Cup, but a little rest coming in your way, I hope.
Yeah, no, it's been nice to kind of be stationed in one place for a bit, and also got up your way for Thanksgiving. So the Bills boys got the turkey and stuffing done. So it was an adventure, but we actually came across pretty good
I
Thanksgiving
was
dinner.
just glad no one sent me one of those viral videos with, the iced turkey dumped into the, frying oil and it explodes. And I look and I see a certain redheaded Austin correspondent friend of mine. I was just happy that
Nah,
that didn't happen. So
we're true
I'm
Midwesterners. We get the turkey from Kroger, throw it in the oven. You know, it's it is what it is, but
classic,
it's
classic
delicious.
Midwest. We're talking as the MLS Cup Final has been decided. It's the Portland Timbers hosting NYCFC. For a while there, it looked like Yankee Stadium would have hosted MLS Cup, which would have been interesting. Like a lot of people are trashing on it, and the field is bad. Don't get me wrong, the field is bad. It's a weird field. The dimensions are not good, but I thought maybe they could overhaul since they had some time. The Yankee Stadium, they're not going to be hosting Yankee games for a while, especially if this MLB lockout continues. So I thought maybe they'd be able to do something cool, but we don't even have to worry about that because it's going to be an
Right.
atmosphere that soccer fans know and love in Portland. A fantastic atmosphere as always. The Timbers earn the right to host MLS Cup and they win the game and get it done. It's a weird one, Chris, in the fact that you're looking at the two number 4 seeds. And of course, we can't talk about NYCFC getting through without talking about, unfortunately, the Philadelphia Union, who they beat in the semifinal, the conference final, going down 11 guys because of COVID. It's kind of unclear to me if it's positive test, close contacts, exactly what it is. I think some information is sort of dripping out about that. But what do you make of this MLS Cup final matchup? I think it goes to show that what we were saying about the Texas teams all year, if you just get in, you never know what could happen, is
True.
true.
Yeah, I mean, nothing says parity like the middle seed from both conferences
Number
making it
4.
making it through. So, but I thought the last few games have been exciting. Of course, you had the storyline of Philadelphia, Aurelian and Cullen playing for the first time since 2019 in any match, which is kind of insane. And it also felt kind of weird to be rooting for him a little bit. I think I've sort of made my Philly love known for that Union team, and them without everybody kind of took that up a notch. But it is good to see Claudia Rena's NYCFC construction finally pay off in getting to MLS Cup final. And then in the West, I mean, who would have thought when Portland came here and got stomped twice that they'd be all the way through to the final? So I think Austin FC fans are kind of taking some, I don't know, a little bit of consolation, a little bit of solace in that fact. But it should be a fun final, and I think it worked out for the best for MLS. Although I think those of us kind of that root for chaos were sort of hoping for RSL against NYCFC at Yankee Stadium could have been kind of a spectacle. But
That's true.
this will be fun too.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you look at that game on Sunday, like you said, and even though Philadelphia had so many guys missing, they start out in the lead, right? Like, the
Mhm.
game is kind of tight for about an hour, and then Philly gets the goal. And then just like that, the defense, I think, look, when your defense is anchored by a guy who hasn't played in the league for years, you're not surprised necessarily when it starts to take a bit of a dive after the hour mark, right? So I think it's interesting not only kind of how they played that and what the situation was, but also now what happens with Jim Curtin, because he's been an example of basically Luchi Gonzalez gone better. and I don't think Luchi Gonzalez necessarily went wrong at FC Dallas, but Jim Curtin is a guy who won trophies with Philadelphia Union, kind of benefited from their top academy. Brendan Aronson and Mark Kinsey get sold this offseason, and they still get back to the playoffs, get all the way to the conference final, and who knows what would have happened if they were healthy. But now Curtin is the hottest name to replace I can't even remember which Dutch guy it is at this point at FC Cincinnati. FC Cincinnati, now the sporting director, Chris Albright, who was at Philadelphia before that. FC Cincinnati has more of a budget than the Philadelphia Union do. But at the same time, Chris, that Cincy job seems a little toxic, might be strong, but you wouldn't say anyone's had success in that role so far. Is this so attractive for, you're an Ohio guy, is this so attractive for Curtin to come over with Albright, with the budget, with the chance at a new start? He said in the past he actually wants to coach in Europe. Is this a springboard to that? Or is he smarter to stay at home? He's a Philly guy. He actually wanted to play for the Union, and they said no in his very last season. That's how he got into coaching, coached some kids. I read a profile on Curtin by Sam Steckel from The Athletic that was really nice, that kind of dug into that background. He's a Philly guy. What's the smarter move here? Stay at home, love the one you're with, or test the waters a little bit?
It all feels very college football, doesn't it?
For sure.
Like with Cincinnati being in the playoff and FC Cincinnati trying to get to keep that relevance in that market. And, I could kind of see it. I mean, if we've learned anything, continuing on the college football theme, the last few weeks, it's that money talks. And, with Jim Curtin, I do think that, he's accomplished about everything that you could reasonably expect him to in Philadelphia. It just comes down to, does he, is the ultimate move Europe, and how quickly does he want to make that move? Because, it might take some time at FC Cincinnati to get this thing right and to get this thing rolling. But the ceiling, I think, for FC Cincinnati, you have the beautiful stadium, maybe the best in the league. There's certainly no shortage of a willingness to spend. It's just they need somebody who's at the steering wheel that actually, can get the right guys in place. And I think Jim Curtin could do that. And of course, he's got the experience with the academy as well, which Cincinnati, is not necessarily a hotbed, the way, Dallas or, even Philadelphia could be with the East Coast. But, I think you can really reasonably get talent anywhere. So, that's valuable experience. I can see obviously why Cincinnati is targeting him. It's just does he want to take the money? Does he want to, take on the project, or is he kind of happy to sit where he's at until somebody comes calling from the other side of the pond? So,
I think it's smarter to stay where he's at, but I wouldn't be surprised if he takes it. Not necessarily just because money talks as well, but when you're at these franchises that don't want to spend big money, I think you kind of. So I covered Oscar Pareja at FC Dallas, right? Smart guy, good coach, really believes in the academy system, really believes in the American player in developing that talent, and was quite good at it. But I think there becomes a certain point where you're looking and you're falling short of the ultimate goal, MLS Cup. And you see these other teams that are, and look, you don't even have to be like a soccer expert like these guys are, like Pareja is, like Curtin is. You don't have to be like an expert to look around and say, like, what's the difference between that team that's making it and achieving their goals of lifting trophies and celebrating and my team? They have 4 or 5 bigger budget signings who make the team better. And then you don't have to rely on your 16-year-old academy kid that you tossed in at right back and prayed that he worked. And, he did great. You don't have to do that at those clubs because they have that succession potentially. Sometimes they do bring those young players in. Sometimes 11 guys get COVID and you have to start those players in a Western Conference, or an Eastern Conference in this case, final. Let's talk about the guy who is going to be coaching FC Dallas now. It's Nico Estévez. A Valencia native, comes from Greg Berhalter's staff, was officially announced Thursday and unveiled Friday in Frisco. I was obviously there, wrote a little column on Monday on the Striker Texas that you can check out with kind of some full thoughts on how big of a challenge this is. And I think that Nico Estévez is a smart guy, and talking to him a little bit, I think he understands what he's walking into, Chris. That's important because these managers need to know that they're in the situation that they're in. I think when we talk about Pareja, Curtin, these other managers, Luchi Gonzalez, it hasn't always been easy to find that balance between producing talent and winning games. And Estévez says he thinks that FC Dallas can do both. I also have a story up on the Striker Texas that he called himself a bit of a romantic. He said that he thinks if FC Dallas wins MLS Cup, they should do it as a reflection of their identity, which has always been developing youth players. So I would say exciting words and seemingly a quite capable leader from FC Dallas. What's your first impression, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, the question is always, I think, with FC Dallas is, how connected, and aligned are, the ownership and, the sporting, how connected, is that vision from Nico Estévez to, what we're seeing right now, obviously with, the Ricardo Pepi situation and, these guys, yeah, you want to win it with the, the players that you're producing, but are you really going to allow them to stick around long enough to do that? And is that the right decision organizationally? Right. So those are the kinds of things that I think that they really got to get right behind the scenes. And, I think you wrote or at least tweeted, you're always going to win the press conference. Right. So, it'll be interesting to see how things look on the field, but, I think, reason for hope in Frisco and reason to, sort of look ahead to the future of this club, when, they're clearly making a statement that they want to go, try and win. I mean, that was the whole thing with letting Luchi Gonzalez go when they did. So now, the proof's kind of in the pudding a little bit.
You mentioned the relationship between the front office and how does Estévez get on with Andre Zanota, who's the sporting director. He actually was the contact. I'm going to cough. He actually was the contact. Actually, Berhalter, I think, was the biggest contact. He and Zanota had a relationship that's long-standing, going back to Zanota being with Santos and Berhalter being with the Crew. So that was the connection. The Hunts really have no connection. The ownership group, the Hunts, have really no connection to Estévez that I can tell. Maybe I'm wrong, but from as far as I've seen, the connection is that they're hiring this guy as coach. Now, that normally wouldn't be that remarkable, right? What was Austin FC's connection to Josh? Yes, there was the connection of an existing relationship in some ways between coach, but
the connection is the same. I think it's Greg.
Yeah, I guess it. I guess it is the same. It's the same man in this case, but I guess ownership groups hire coaches they don't know all the time. The Hunts don't do that. You look at the last several coaches. Luchi Gonzalez was obviously the academy director. Oscar Pareja was in the academy, a former player who was in the academy and then worked as an assistant before they wooed him back from Colorado. Coach before that was Shella Steinman, who coached SMU for a long time, including FC Dallas chairman and CEO Clark Hunt. So they knew him quite well, even though he wasn't a former FC Dallas assistant. And the two guys before that were either former FC Dallas assistants or players or both. So it's been 2 decades since the last time FC Dallas hired a coach that they don't have, that the Hunt family doesn't have some sort of relationship with. Estévez does believe, from what I've spoken with him about and heard from him in the press conference, he does believe that he's going to get support. He does believe that he's going to get some signings. He does believe that he's going to get some players. And I wonder when those things start to show the differences between his expectations and even what he experienced at the Crew. Look at the front office that the Crew has. And I'm not just talking about technical director. I'm talking about sports science staff. I'm talking about data analysts. I'm talking about assistant coaches and even assistants in the academy, right? These are things that when you look at other MLS teams, that's still where some of the spending is much more than for FC Dallas. Yeah. The budget, for the roster, is not that crazy, right? FC Dallas isn't spending big money. They're not necessarily bringing big name players, big money players, but they don't necessarily have right now as deep of support staffs or as many resources as the MLS teams that are consistently lifting MLS Cup, the Supporters Shield, etc. So I wonder, I wrote that in my column, he's a smart guy, and I think he understands what he's stepping into. I wonder when the frustration sets in. If it does, maybe it doesn't. Maybe everything goes well, or maybe the Hunts say, this is when we need to start investing that money.
I think the good thing is, and I want to get around to a bit of a 30,000 foot view from a national team perspective, but the good thing is he does have that connection with Greg Berhalter, who did it in Columbus on a tight budget, right? Building that professionalism, making that club into more of a a European style, even though he was the head coach and sporting director throughout his time there. But, I think that the sense is that what Columbus built upon when they did get that infusion of spend was really the bones were already in place from what Berhalter built. And so I think if he does get frustrated, I think he's got that person to lean on, which is good. But the other thing here that fascinates me and sort of excites me as a U.S. men's national team follower and fan is the fact that Nico Estévez is coming with that close connection to the national team, and Luchi Gonzalez now goes to the national team, and those ties between FC Dallas and the U.S. men's national team get even stronger. And what effect does that have when these guys come from FC Dallas into the national team? The roster, I think we wrote a story. What is there, 6 or 7 guys that have ties?
It depends on who gets called in when. I think the December camp is 6, but yeah. I mean, it's a lot of guys every time they get called in from Dallas.
And so there's that comfortability already with Luchi. There's obviously, Nico's going to have, all kinds of, say and input to Greg about who's ready. I think when you look at this incubator that you've got up in Frisco for national team talent, I think it should be really exciting that they made this move from a U.S. men's national team perspective. What does that mean for FC Dallas? I'm not entirely sure, but I think it's only good when you see these guys coming from Dallas and making an impact on the national and global stage.
One thing I will say that is interesting that I think FC Dallas fans can be right to kind of question. I don't want to dwell too much on it because what's done is done. Luchi Gonzalez was hired as an academy director with no significant first team head coaching experience. He had none. Nico Estévez has a little, although it's in sort of an obscure lower division in Spain. That's fine. He also is the interim manager, as I'm going to write about, hopefully in the Striker Texas, for 2 very important games for Valencia that were quite interesting. Hopefully we dig into his backstory a little bit on the site. Don't forget to subscribe to the Striker Texas. Nico Estévez comes in with no significant first team head coaching experience and a lot of academy experience, about the same age. Resume is a little different because he has a lot of assistant coaching experience, but at the same time, when FC Dallas fired Luchi Gonzalez, I think the expectation was if a guy of this profile, a lot of academy experience, trying his best to get the first team thing under his fingers, if that profile didn't work, why did you bring in another guy with sort of the same profile? I still think that when you look back, to me, I would say it's clear, but maybe that's not fair. It seems like there was no plan after firing Luchi Gonzalez, which isn't great, but at the same time, it does look like there's a plan in place now.
And, not to bring up the Columbus Crew connection again, but it is really interesting that we look across the state at Houston, Dallas, and Austin, now of the connections to that staff, right? You got Pat Onstad now in Houston as the sporting director. You've got Nico Estévez, who spent the last few years, I think, before he came to FC Dallas with the crew, before he went to the U.S. men's national team with the Crew, and then obviously Josh Wolf, who was Greg Berhalter's right hand man. And so, how smart of decisions is that? How good are those guys, and is that really the right moves for these clubs? I think we're going to find out.
It'll be interesting to sort of dig into those ties whenever there's Austin FC Dallas games. That'll be fascinating because I think both Estévez and Wolf really like the way that Berhalter sees the game. That's what wooed, Estévez said, him to come from Spain to the United States, to go to Columbus, to link up with Greg, was that sort of shared vision of how the game should be played, of how football should be played. And of course, Wolf shares a lot of that vision as well. Let's talk about Josh Wolf teams, Chris. Let's talk about Austin FC, the roster decisions made during the off season. I don't know. We get this like MLS roster drop where they're basically like, yeah, these guys are gone, these guys are staying. And it's always interesting, but then it's just like pretty final, right? Like some of the players on these lists can renegotiate if they're totally a free agent or if they have a certain. But these are the players the club says we're not picking up that option. That option stinks. Tell me what the biggest takeaway or the biggest news coming out of the Austin FC drop was.
Yeah, I mean, I think that some of the bigger news is obviously Jared Stroud not coming back. Ben Sweat not coming back, and I think that one will be final. I was talking on a Twitter Spaces with Landon Cottam, who does the Moon Tower Soccer. You should go check out their podcast if you don't already. But what I kind of think with a guy like Ben Sweat is he's going to find that value elsewhere, right? If Austin FC is not willing to pay his salary, he's a left back. He is coming off of an injury, but I think with 27 clubs around the league, somebody's going to be needing a left back. So I think Ben Sweat's probably gone. It's possible we see Jared Stroud and Brady Scott, who were drafted in the expansion draft and had to take up senior roster spots, renegotiate so they're on the supplemental roster. But even that I find a little doubtful. Kakuta Mane, who's just a great guy, local talent, just didn't quite produce at the level that you need from that spot. And kind of what I've said all along is, with these guys, you've got to open up space on this roster so you can bring in new players, and you need better production than these guys gave. So unfortunately, I don't expect. You got 6 guys whose contract options were declined. I'll run through Jared Stroud, Kakuta Mane, Brady Scott, Aiden Stanley, Aaron Schoenfeld, Ben Sweat, and then transfer options declined for guys who were on loan, Sebastian Berhalter and Manny Perez. We'll see what happens if there's anybody that gets renegotiated, but for now, I'm kind of thinking that those 8 spots will be open, and Austin FC's got some work to do to build this thing heading into 2022.
Yeah. No, it's a business, right? I think as much as it's, like Kakuta's a great example where it's like, I think we enjoyed talking to him this year. He's the guy's guy in the community. He is great at soccer, but maybe not at the level necessary to be, or the fit needed for Austin FC. And that's the business, right? For FC Dallas, you look at the names, there weren't a ton of surprises. The biggest one maybe is that Brian Acosta is not returning. He's a designated player. That means FC Dallas has 2 designated player spots to play with. Will they play with them? We don't know. But Acosta was there for a while, Honduran international, strong central midfielder. Something seemed to go wrong toward the end there. I heard some interesting rumors that I kind of just tossed in the rumor bin, but nothing juicy. Just like coaches weren't happy. Neither Lucci nor Marco were happy with how he was practicing, maybe even coming back from Honduras camp specifically. But from what I saw when he was on the field, they were, I think, a better team. I thought it was quite strange that Ferruzzi and basically his entire end of his tenure said, I'm going Cerrillo and Cervenia. Again, maybe something was happening behind the scenes there that made those decisions make sense. Maybe he just wanted to give more time to academy kids, knowing Acosta wasn't planning to come back next year. It'll be interesting to find his next destination. Felipe, the goalkeeper, and Bressan both maybe headed back to Brazil. Neither of their extension was picked up. A couple kind of, I guess, fringe defenders, Kaiser Gomez, who they signed as kind of cover during the summer, and Johnny Nelson. He's not healthy, fullback. Hopefully he can get fit and start playing again, but he had a back surgery this year that kept him out for most of the year. Acosta, who I mentioned, Andres Ricarte, who was maybe the best player in Texas in the preseason in the Copa Tejas, the Copita. We thought, right, oh man, this guy is FC Dallas' most important attacking player, and then just didn't really show it. Too many times, I think he was still trying to fulfill this role that he was asked to play in 2020, where he was this 2-way midfielder, and instead of kind of creating and being a playmaker, sending through balls like he did in the preseason, he sort of reverts to form. And again, I'm not really sure if the breakdown was with him or with the coaching staff. I don't know. Freddy Vargas, the Venezuelan winger, not coming back, and Kyle Zobek is is the only one who's just out of contract. They could re-sign him. He's a really solid third goalkeeper, but it's also possible that he says, I'm going to go somewhere where I can play. But right now, FC Dallas has 1 goalkeeper, Jimmy Maurer, under contract. You feel good about him being the number 1, but you do need someone backing him up. So that's a place where FC Dallas almost certainly will have to sign. That'll be interesting to keep track of. We can run down Houston as well. You got their list pulled up, Chris?
I can
pull it up. The most interesting thing about Houston for me, from Victor Ariza has some stuff on the striker text that people can sink their teeth into, is simply the Carlos Darwin Quintero situation. Because
right,
when he played with the Dynamo last year, and this is another one where I'm not sure if it was some stuff behind the scenes or what was happening, but when he played, the Dynamo were a better team. He didn't play enough, and I don't know whose fault that was. I don't know if that's a Tab Ramos thing, if that's a Quintero thing, if that was a Matt Jordan thing. I don't know where that came from, But this guy, when he was on the field, your attacking options were markedly better. You're way better in attack when one of your best attackers played. And it doesn't seem like, again, it's not that you don't need Pep Guardiola to figure that out. But he wasn't playing. I mean, he just didn't get in for the first half of the season or more. And then they start playing him and they get better. So he's out of contract. He could come back to the Dynamo, but he also might end up somewhere else. To me, that's the most interesting sort of off-season signing machination. Obviously, Houston also needs a coach.
Totally. There are lots of things to keep track of here with Houston. Another big one that they declined the option on. I was talking to Victor yesterday. It does sound like they're trying to renegotiate Maxi Urruti's salary. He was another player who was good when he played. I think he had a bout with COVID that kind of took him down a bit, which Victor had a really nice story on. Other guys, I'll just run through them real quick. Jose Bisima, Maynor Figueroa, him and Oscar Bonia Garcia are both out of contract, or, Figueroa had his option to find Boniek out of contract, two of the mainstays for Houston. We don't think that they'll be back necessarily. Alejandro Fuenmayor, Eric McHugh, Marco Maric, Kyle Morton, and like you said, Darwin Quintera had his option declined. Some of these guys are free agents, and like for all three teams, you can go check out our off-season content. We've got
it'll probably be easier to read it for yourself than listen to us read a list, but I don't know, if you want list reading, we give it to you on the Striker Texas.
Should I run down the list of free agents that I put up yesterday? No,
please don't. There is a great list, comprehensive, and of course, like we're mentioning, some of these guys are outright free agents. Some of these guys might re-sign with their teams. It's not the same as like the NBA where it's a restricted free agent and your team can match the offer. It's kind of like that. So yeah, it's going to be fascinating. I think, the Dynamo need a remake. They need a remake. And you mentioned Minor Figueroa, Bonia Garcia, even Quintero. You could say these guys have been with the team for several years, kind of know what you get with them. Obviously, whoever comes in as coach is going to reshape that. Obviously, Pat Onstad doing some scouting according to rumors, which you can also check out on the Striker Texas. We got a list of all the gossip. If you want to sink your teeth into the chisme, we've got our list on the Striker Texas as well. Obviously with Onstad scouting in Latin America, maybe looking for a coach there, maybe not. Right. It's the time of the year that the Dynamo need to get their ducks in a row. Because
I think for all three clubs, right?
Yeah, for sure.
All three clubs are going to be active. It's a good thing that we got a little bit of a rest in November, because I think December is going to get real busy here real quick. Starting the day after the MLS Cup Final, we've got half-day trade window that I expect one or all three clubs to be active in. You've got the expansion draft next week, free agency opens next week. Like we'll be tracking all this stuff on the Striker Texas. Like I said, if you miss anything or you just want to get caught up, we've got roster trackers up for all three clubs, plus the Dash. Man, the
NWSL offseason is bonkers. It seems like the Dash are kind of sitting out of it for now, but the rest of the league is like pew, 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 trades, free agency, everything. So that's been fun to track.
When you've got two expansion teams coming in a league that is, it's much less of a global market than MLS can be. So True. It's kind of wild.
You can keep track of it all on the Striker Texas. Your subscription to the Striker Texas allows us to do what we do, whether we're chatting on the podcast, whether we're writing interesting columns, whether we're reporting, breaking the stories, to be honest, about who's the next coach at your favorite team, what's the next big player signing. We got it all over on the Striker Texas. We hope you agree and subscribe. Chris, we got 1 minute left. A local business or restaurant that you'd like to shout out? We typically do the best thing I've eaten. I ate all week, but it's been a long time since we've done that. So anything in your mind that you say, got to check these guys out?
Yeah, I mean, I'll give a shout. I haven't done this on the podcast in a little bit to, FC Austin Elite. I know they've been, grinding away here. Been really thankful to Danny Woodfill for his generosity over the years, and go check out that club, see what they're doing. If you want to get involved, they've got plenty of great things going on.
I just realized we didn't run down maybe the most important thing that happened in Texas soccer last week, the Austin FC media game. You win or you lose.
I won. I did win. I'm not sure I won in my performance, but my team won. So
yeah, the player ratings will be up on the Striker Texas, and they are not kind to Chris Bils. For Chris Bils in Austin, for producer Ross, also in the capital of the Lone Star State, I'm Jon Arnold in beautiful Dallas, Texas. We'll talk to you guys next week. The Striker Texas MLS show will return. We got a couple things planned this offseason. I think we might get to next week. Our favorite cities that we visited, best cities, power rank is going to come up. And also, I think this was for next week, making fun of our terrible predictions. We'll be back next week. We'll talk to you then. Take care.